Lieutenant Jack Miller cursed as his scout ship's engine sputtered, then died completely. Warning alarms blared through the cockpit, red lights flashing across his control panel. He had been mapping an unexplored sector when something, a micrometeorite, perhaps, punctured his fuel line. "Computer status report," Jack said, fighting to keep panic from his voice. "Main engine failure. Auxiliary power at 18% and dropping. Life support systems compromised," the emotionless computer voice responded. Jack's hands flew across the controls, trying to reroute power and stabilize his descent. The small scout ship, barely larger than an old Earth shuttle, was never designed for atmosphere entry without functioning engines. "Nearest habitable planet?" he asked, knowing his options were disappearing by the second. "Planet designation unknown. Habitable atmosphere detected. Distance 340,000 kilometers. Jack grimaced. An uncharted world. Not ideal, but better than dying in the cold vacuum of space. "Plot emergency landing trajectory," he ordered. The ship shuddered violently as it began its uncontrolled descent toward the mysterious planet. Through the viewport, Jack watched as a beautiful blue-green world with purple-tinged cloud formations grew larger. Under different circumstances, he might have appreciated the view. As the ship entered the atmosphere, the hull began to glow red, from friction. Temperature inside the cockpit rose rapidly. Sweat poured down Jack's face as he fought with the controls. "Warning. Hull integrity at 60%. Recommend immediate evacuation," the computer announced. "Not yet," Jack muttered. He needed to get closer to the surface before ejecting. Too high, and he'd die in the fall. Too low, and he wouldn't have time for his emergency chute to deploy. The ship broke through cloud cover, revealing a landscape dominated by dense vegetation in strange shades of violet and indigo. No sign of civilization, no clearings for a controlled landing. Hull integrity at 40%. Critical failure imminent. Jack strapped himself into the ejection harness. "Computer, deploy emergency beacon and transmit coordinates to Terran. Exploration Core. Beacon deployed, signal strength minimal. Unable to confirm transmission received." Perfect, just perfect. The ground rushed toward him at terrifying speed. Jack pulled the ejection lever. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then with an explosive bang, the cockpit canopy blew off and his seat rocketed upward. The violent force of ejection nearly knocked him unconscious. Cold air whipped past as he tumbled through alien skies. His harness automatically released the emergency chute, and Jack felt the welcome jerk as it deployed and slowed his descent. Below, his scout ship continued its fatal journey, crashing into the dense jungle with an earth-shaking explosion. A fireball rose above the tree line, followed by a plume of black smoke. Jack drifted toward the canopy of strange trees. The violet foliage reached up like grasping hands. He tried to maneuver, away from the densest parts but had limited control. His body slammed into branches, each impact sending jolts of pain through his already battered frame. The parachute caught on something, jerking him to a stop 15 feet above the ground. Jack hung there, breathing heavily, before unlatching his harness. He dropped, hitting the spongy forest floor with a grunt. Everything hurt. He took inventory, cuts, bruises, possibly a cracked rib, but nothing life-threatening. His survival pack was still attached to his flight suit. At least something had gone right. Jack looked around at the alien forest. Strange sounds echoed through. The trees, clicks, whistles, and low humming noises unlike any Earth animals. The air smelled sweet and slightly metallic. Gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth standard. He activated his personal locator beacon, but the readout showed interference. Something in the local environment was blocking the signal. "Great," Jack muttered. Crashed on an uncharted planet with no way to call home. The sun, larger and more orange than Earth's, was beginning to set. Night would come soon, and who knew what predators might emerge in the darkness. Jack checked his sidearm, gathered what supplies he could, and set off toward the smoke from his crashed ship. He needed to salvage anything useful before local scavengers, or worse, found it. What he didn't realize was that his arrival had already been noticed, and his presence had disturbed something ancient and powerful in this alien world. Jack spent 3 days salvaging what he could from his crashed ship. He recovered his emergency kit, some ration packs, a portable water purifier, and a damaged communication device. The distress beacon was beyond repair, its circuitry melted from the heat of re-entry. The jungle of Kythera was both beautiful and menacing. Massive trees with trunks the color of deep amethyst stretched hundreds of feet into the sky. Their leaves shimmered between blue and violet depending on the light. Small creatures darted through the underbrush, six-legged lizards with translucent skin and flying insects that glowed at dusk. Jack set up a small camp near a stream with clean water. Each night, strange calls echoed through the forest. Some sounded almost musical, while others sent chills down his spine. He kept his laser pistol close as he slept. On the fourth morning, Jack decided to explore farther from his crash site. He needed to find higher ground to get a better view of the landscape, and perhaps spot signs of intelligent life or useful resources. "If I'm stuck here, I might as well know what I'm dealing with," he muttered to himself, packing a day's worth of supplies. He hiked for hours through increasingly dense vegetation. The humidity was oppressive, causing his uniform to stick to his skin. Strange flowers opened as he passed, releasing sweet-smelling pollen that made him sneeze. Around midday, Jack noticed the forest changing. The wild growth gave way to what appeared to be deliberately arranged plants. The path he followed became more defined, with smooth stones placed at regular intervals. "Intelligent life," he whispered, heart racing with both excitement and apprehension. Or at least there was at some point. Following the path, Jack soon heard sounds ahead, rhythmic drumming and what might have been voices, though like no language he had ever heard. He moved forward cautiously, crouching low in the underbrush at the edge of a large clearing. What he saw took his breath away. Dozens of tall, graceful beings moved in a synchronized dance. Their skin shimmered with iridescent scales in shades of blue, green, and purple. Each had 4 arms and compound eyes that caught the light like prisms. Most striking were their elaborate head crests, some folding back like fans, others standing, upright in displays of vibrant color. The clearing itself was clearly ceremonial. Stone pillars carved with intricate symbols formed a circle. In the center stood a raised platform where one particularly magnificent being presided over the gathering. Her crest was larger and more colorful than the others, and she wore an ornate garment that caught the sunlight. Jack realized he was witnessing some sort of ritual or ceremony. The beings seemed divided into 2 groups. One group, with more elaborate crests, performed displays that involved changing colors and executing complex movements. The other group observed, occasionally emitting clicking sounds or musical trills. "Some kind of selection ceremony," Jack whispered to himself, remembering xenobiology lectures from his training. "Mating displays, maybe?" He leaned forward to get a better look, not noticing the dry branch beneath his boot. It snapped with a crack that seemed deafening in the moment of silence that had fallen over the ceremony. Every alien head turned in his direction. Jack froze, knowing he had been detected. One of the aliens made a sharp, commanding sound. 3 tall figures with more muscular builds and what appeared to be weapons detached from the group and moved with alarming speed toward Jack's hiding spot. In panic, Jack fumbled for his emergency flare. If he needed to run, a bright distraction might help. The flare ignited with a brilliant red light just as the first of the alien warriors reached the edge of the clearing. To Jack's surprise, the warrior stopped abruptly, compound eyes fixed on the flare. The being's crest extended fully, displaying patterns Jack hadn't seen before. The other warriors gathered around, making excited clicking and whistling sounds. Jack didn't understand their reaction, but one thing was clear. He had just changed the entire dynamic of this encounter. For better or worse remained to be seen. Jack found himself surrounded by the tall alien warriors. Their iridescent scales shimmered as they encircled him, making strange clicking sounds to each other. Despite his military training, he knew resistance would be pointless. He was outnumbered. On an unfamiliar world, one warrior with deep blue scales and an elaborate crest edged in gold stepped forward. Or perhaps he gestured toward Jack with one of four arms, making a series of whistling sounds. I can't understand you, Jack said slowly, raising his empty hands to show he meant no harm. The warrior tilted his head, compound eyes reflecting, light in prismatic patterns. He gestured again, more firmly this time, pointing toward the ceremonial clearing. Jack nodded, understanding at least this simple communication. You want me to go with you? Okay, I'm moving. Escorted by the warrior party, Jack entered the clearing. The gathered aliens parted, creating a path toward the central platform. Many extended their crests in what Jack assumed was either curiosity or alarm. Their clicking language increased in volume and speed. At the platform stood the magnificent being Jack had observed earlier. Up close, she was even more impressive. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, her scales shifted between purple and teal with delicate patterns flowing across her body. Her crest was fully extended, displaying intricate, geometric designs in vibrant colors. Jack was pushed to his knees before her. He kept his eyes lowered, hoping this posture would be interpreted as respect rather than weakness. The lead warrior approached the platform and communicated in rapid clicks and whistles. Jack heard the word Kith Aaron repeated several times, which he guessed might be what these beings called themselves. The regal female, clearly someone of importance, stepped down from the platform. She circled Jack slowly, examining him with obvious interest. Her compound eyes caught the light as she leaned closer, her four hands gesturing in patterns Jack couldn't interpret. She reached out one slender hand and touched Jack's hair, making a musical trilling sound that caused a stir among the gathered aliens. Another Kitharan stepped forward, a male with an elaborate but slightly smaller crest than the females. He spoke forcefully, gesturing toward Jack and then to the forest beyond. His posture seemed aggressive. The female responded sharply, her crest changing to a deeper purple. She pointed at the now extinguished flare in Jack's hand, then made a sweeping gesture that encompassed the ceremonial ground. The male backed away, his crest flattening slightly. Whatever she had said seemed to hold authority. A smaller Catharan approached, carrying what appeared to be a technological device. The female took it and activated it near Jack. A soft hum emanated from the device, and after a moment, words began to form, halting and oddly accented but recognizable. You display during selection. This forbidden for outsiders. Jack blinked in surprise. You have translation technology? The device processed his words, and the female listened to its output. Her crest rippled with what might have been surprise. Ancient technology rarely needed, came the translated response. I am Zareth, daughter of the Sovereign Queen. You displayed during sacred selection. Jack shook his head. The flare? That wasn't a display. It was just a light signal, a tool. Zareth's crest shifted to a curious pattern of blue and gold. Intent matters not. Display occurred during selection. By ancient law, display during selection is claim of participation. The male who had spoken earlier stepped forward again, the translator picking up fragments of his protest. Not Catharan cannot claim violation of tradition. Zareth turned to face the assembled Catharans, her posture straight and commanding. Through the translator, Jack caught the meaning of her proclamation. I, Princess Zareth, claim, this being as my selected. The ancestors' law makes no distinction of origin. He displayed during selection. He is mine. A ripple of clicks, whistles, and trills spread through the crowd. Some extended their crests in what seemed like shock or outrage. Jack remained kneeling, trying to process what had just happened. Somehow his emergency flare had been interpreted as a mating display, and now an alien princess had claimed him as her what? Mate? Husband? He was beginning to think surviving the crash might have been the easy part. Jack stood on the balcony of his quarters in the royal palace, watching the 3 moons of Kithara rise above the strange violet horizon. A week had passed since Princess Zareth had claimed him in the selection ceremony, and his head was still spinning from the rapid changes in his situation. His rooms were spacious and adorned with crystalline structures that emitted a soft, pleasant light. The architecture was both alien and beautiful, with curved walls and ceilings that mimicked natural formations. Despite the luxury, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was as much a prisoner as he was a guest. A melodic chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Kivar, a young Catharan assigned as Jack's cultural guide and translator. "Greetings, Jack Miller," Kivar said through the improved translation device he carried. "Princess Zareth requests your presence in the knowledge chamber." Jack nodded and followed Kivar through the winding corridors of the palace. Other Catharans they passed reacted to Jack with various degrees of curiosity and disdain. Some flattened their crests in what he had learned was a sign of disapproval. "They don't like me much, do they?" Jack asked. Kivar's crest rippled in a pattern Jack was beginning to recognize as discomfort. "Your presence disturbs tradition. The selection is sacred. Many believe Princess Zareth uses you to delay her responsibilities." Jack had suspected as much. "And what do you think?" "I think you are interesting," Kivar replied diplomatically. "Here we are." The knowledge chamber was a vast circular room lined with what appeared to be living technology, plants and crystal, formations that somehow interfaced with each other. Princess Zareth stood at the center, her scales shimmering in patterns of deep thought. "Leave us," she instructed Kivar, who bowed and departed. Zareth turned to Jack. "We must speak plainly. Your language skills improve." Jack nodded. He'd been studying the Catharan language through the translation device. "I'm learning." "Your Highness, I need to understand what's happening here. What exactly does being your selected mean?" Zareth's crest formed a pattern he hadn't seen before. "In simple terms, you are my chosen mate, but the reality is more complex." She gestured to a display that showed images of Catharan biology. "Every 7 cycles, our biology compels us to select partners. The females choose, the males display. It is our way." "But I'm not Catharan," Jack pointed out. "Precisely," Zareth said, her crest shifting to a brilliant blue. "I needed a loophole. My mother, the Sovereign Queen, is in failing health. Royal. Tradition demands I complete the selection and produce an heir before ascending to rule. But I am not ready to bind myself to any of the noble males." Understanding dawned on Jack. "So I'm a delay tactic. You chose me because it's impossible for us to actually mate. I chose you because ancient law doesn't specify the selected must be Catharan. It was clever, yes?" Her crest formed what Jack now recognized as pride. "Very clever," Jack admitted. "But what happens when they realize your plan?" Zareth's crest flattened slightly. "Already challenges arise. The noble houses grow restless. Lady Meva particularly. She desires her son to be my mate, securing her house's power." Jack walked around the central display, examining the Catharan biological imagery. "There's something else you're not telling me. Why does this planet affect me strangely? I've been having unusual dreams and my vision sometimes shifts." Zareth hesitated. "Cathara's radiation is unique. It affects all life here, triggers our mating cycles. For non-Catharans, effects are unpredictable. Our ancestors' records show other visitors experience changes." "Other visitors? You mean humans have been here before?" "Long ago," Zareth confirmed. "Before my grandmother's time, they did not stay." The revelation stunned Jack. Had Earth lost contact with a colony here? Was there a way home he hadn't considered? Before he could ask more questions, a royal messenger burst into the chamber, crest flattened in alarm. "Princess," the messenger clicked urgently. "The Council of Elders has convened. They demand your presence, and that of your selected. They question the validity of your claim." Zareth's scales darkened with what Jack now recognized as determination. "Tell them we come," she turned to Jack. "Our alliance faces its first test. Follow my lead, speak only when addressed, and remember, your survival depends on our success." Jack nodded, suddenly aware of how precarious his position truly was. In trying to escape one impossible situation, he had landed squarely in another. The council chamber echoed with angry clicks and whistles as Jack entered alongside Princess Zareth. 7 elder Kitharans sat on elevated platforms, their crests fully extended in displays of authority. Their scales had dulled with age, but their compound eyes remained sharp and critical as they watched the princess and her human-selected approach. Lady Meva stood before the council, her scales shimmering with righteous indignation. She was the most vocal opponent of Zareth's claim, and her son, a broad-shouldered Kitharan named Dravok, stood beside her with his crest raised in challenge. "The ancient laws are clear," Lady Meva was saying as they entered. "The selection is sacred, meant to strengthen our bloodlines. This creature taints our traditions." The head elder, a female with silvery scales, raised a hand for silence. "Princess Zareth, you have heard the concerns. How do you respond?" Zareth stepped forward, her posture regal and unwavering. "Respected elders, the law states any being who displays during selection may be claimed. There is no specification of species." "A technicality," Lady Meva hissed. "The human cannot fulfill the purpose of selection. He cannot produce an heir of royal blood." Jack felt dozens of compound eyes examining him. The scrutiny made his skin itch, and he noticed with alarm that his arms seemed to be developing a faint iridescence under the chamber's lights. The radiation Zareth mentioned was affecting him more than he realized. The head elder leaned forward. "Human, what say you? Do you understand what your position entails?" All eyes turned to Jack. Zareth had warned him to speak carefully. "Respected elders," he began, bowing slightly. "I understand that my presence is unusual, but I have been claimed according to your laws, and I respect your traditions." Lady Meva's crest flattened with disdain. "He knows nothing of our ways. This is a mockery. Yet he shows more respect than some born to our world," Zareth countered, her gaze fixed on Lady Meva. "The selection period lasts 40 days. I have made my claim within the law." The chamber grew tense as the elders conferred in rapid private clicks. Jack felt sweat beading on his forehead. The strange radiation symptoms were becoming more pronounced. Colors seemed more vibrant, and he could almost sense the emotions emanating from the Kitharans around him. Finally, the head elder spoke. "We will allow this claim to stand provisionally, but the human must prove his worthiness through the traditional trials. If he fails, the claim is void." Lady Meva's scales brightened with satisfaction. "The trials would challenge even our strongest males. For a human, they will be impossible." Jack turned to Zareth questioningly. She had not mentioned any trials. "We accept," Zareth declared before Jack could speak. Her crest displayed confidence, but Jack sensed her concern. As they left the chamber, Jack pulled Zareth aside. "What, trials? You didn't tell me about any trials." "I had hoped to avoid them," she admitted. "They are tests of strength, intelligence, and adaptability traditionally undertaken by selected mates. No non-Kitharan has ever attempted them." Jack ran a hand through his hair, noticing with shock that it seemed to be developing a bluish tint at the tips. "Great. And what happens if I fail?" "My claim becomes invalid. I would be forced to select a Kitharan mate immediately." Her scales darkened. Lady Meva would ensure it was her son. They walked in silence through the palace corridors. Outside, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, reflecting Jack's darkening mood. That night, as Jack slept fitfully, 2 shadows slipped into his quarters. He woke to the sensation of being smothered, strong hands pressing something over his face. His military training kicked in and he fought back furiously, managing to strike one of his attackers. A sharp cry of pain echoed in the darkness. Guards rushed in, light crystals illuminating the scene. 2 Kitharans in servant's garb fled through the balcony. As the palace erupted in alarm, Jack sat on the edge of his bed, breathing heavily. The assassination attempt made one thing clear. Someone wanted him dead before the trials even began. What troubled him more was how clearly he had seen his attackers in the darkness. His eyes were changing, adapting to this alien world in ways he didn't understand. Jack stood at the entrance to the trial arena, his heart pounding against his ribs. The massive amphitheater was filled with thousands of Kitharans, their crests extended in excitement. Their clicks and whistles created a deafening chorus that echoed off the crystalline walls. "Remember," Zareth said beside him, her scales shifting. With concern, "these trials were designed for Kitharan physiology. No one expects you to succeed." "Except you," Jack replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Zareth's crest rippled in what he now recognized as affection. "The first trial tests strength, the second, intelligence, the third, adaptability. You need not win, merely survive with dignity." "Wonderful," Jack muttered. The announcement horn sounded, and Jack stepped into the arena. The crowd's noise intensified. In the royal box, the ailing queen watched with interest, her once vibrant scales now pale and dull. Beside her, Lady Meva and her son Dravok observed with obvious disdain. The head elder rose, extending her crest fully. "The first trial begins, the trial of strength." A gate opened on the far side of the arena. A massive creature lumbered out, a Kitharan riding beast called a Drex with 6 muscular legs and armored plates running down its spine. Its rider was Dravok, Lady Meva's son and Zareth's rejected suitor. The human challenger must disarm. "The champion rider," announced the elder. Jack's stomach sank. Dravok was nearly 8 feet tall and clearly powerful even for a Kitharan. The Drex he rode weighed at least a ton. Dravok charged, brandishing a long staff with crystalline blades at each end. The crowd roared as the massive beast thundered toward Jack. Jack had no weapon, no armor, only his wits and the strange new abilities developing from Kithara's radiation. His vision had sharpened. He could now see patterns of heat and energy around living things. His reflexes had quickened too. At the last possible moment, Jack dove sideways, rolling beneath the Drex's massive legs. The crowd gasped. No Kitharan would have attempted such a foolhardy move. Jack sprang up behind the charging beast, grabbed its tail and used the momentum to swing himself onto its back behind Dravok. The surprised Kitharan whirled, but his staff's long reach was now a disadvantage in close quarters. Jack grappled with Dravok, using human wrestling techniques the Kitharan had never encountered. They tumbled from the Drex's back, landing hard on the arena floor. Jack recovered first, wrenching the staff from Dravok's hands and pointing it at the Kitharan's throat. The arena fell silent, then erupted in a mixture of outraged and amazed clicks and whistles. Jack had passed the first trial. "The second trial begins. The trial of intelligence," announced the elder. Servants brought forth a Kitharan puzzle box, a complex crystalline device that reconfigured itself constantly. Jack had seen smaller versions in the palace, but nothing of this complexity. "Solve the pathways before the sand falls," instructed the elder as a massive timekeeper was tilted. Jack examined the puzzle. Thousands of crystal pathways shifted and changed inside the transparent box. He needed to create a continuous path from one side to the other. His military training included spatial reasoning, but this was far beyond anything human. Then Jack noticed something. Patterns in the shifts. Mathematical sequences he recognized from Earth mathematics. The Fibonacci sequence, golden ratios, universal patterns. Jack's fingers flew over the crystal surface, his altered vision allowing him to see energy pulses within the device. The crowd watched in hushed anticipation as the last grains of sand approached the bottom of the timekeeper. With seconds remaining, the puzzle box chimed and glowed blue. Success. Lady Meva's scales darkened with rage. This was not how the trials were supposed to go. "The final trial, the trial of adaptability," called the elder. The arena floor began to shift. Sections rose and fell, some revealing pools of strange liquid, others becoming steep slopes or narrow bridges. From various gates emerged native Kitharan predators, sleek 6-limbed hunters with natural camouflage. "Reach the sacred crystal within the time allowed," instructed the elder. "The predators are hungry, the path treacherous." In the center of the constantly changing landscape glowed a single blue crystal on a pedestal. Jack would need to navigate the shifting terrain and avoid the predators to reach it. As Jack surveyed the challenge before him, he caught Zareth's eye across the arena. For the first time, her crest displayed not just political calculation but something more, genuine concern for his safety. With newfound determination, Jack stepped onto the shifting ground. These trials weren't just about survival anymore. They were about proving himself worthy, not just to the Catharans but to her. Jack dodged as a sleek predator lunged at him, its 6 limbs extended to grasp him. The creature's scales shifted color to match the terrain, making it nearly invisible until the last moment. Only Jack's enhanced vision allowed him to detect the subtle heat signature before it struck. The arena floor continued to change unpredictably. Platforms rose and fell, bridges formed and collapsed, and pools of glowing liquid bubbled up from below. The crowd watched in tense silence as Jack navigated the treacherous landscape. "He moves like no Catharan," whispered one elder to another. "Neither better nor worse, simply different." Jack leaped across a widening gap, landing on a platform that immediately began to sink. He rolled forward, narrowly avoiding another predator that sprang from hiding. 3 more creatures circled him, their compound eyes tracking his every move. The sacred crystal gleamed at the center of the arena, still far from his reach. Jack studied the patterns of the shifting terrain, noticing that despite appearing random, there was a subtle rhythm to the changes. His military training in pattern recognition was proving invaluable. He sprinted forward, timing his movements to the hidden rhythm of the arena. The predators pursued, but Jack stayed just ahead of them, using the changing landscape to his advantage rather than fighting against it. A murmur rippled through the crowd. No previous challenger had recognized the pattern so quickly. Even Zareth leaned forward in surprise, her crest displaying a mixture of astonishment and approval. As Jack approached the central platform where the crystal stood, the final obstacle revealed itself. The platform rose high above the arena, surrounded by a moat of the strange glowing liquid. The only approach was a narrow, spiraling path that wound upward, and it was guarded by the largest predator yet, a massive alpha with scales that shimmered between deep purple and midnight blue. The creature watched Jack with ancient intelligence in its compound eyes. This was no ordinary beast. This was a guardian, selectively bred for centuries to protect Catharan sacred sites. Jack paused, assessing the situation. Brute force would not work against this opponent. The guardian's scales rippled as it studied him in return, both of them locked in a moment of mutual evaluation. Then Jack did something unexpected. He lowered himself to one knee, bowed his head, and extended his arms outward, a gesture of respect he had seen used in Catharan ceremonies. The crowd fell completely silent. No challenger had ever shown deference to the guardian. It was always a battle of dominance. The guardian tilted its head, compound eyes reflecting prismatic light. Then, slowly, it moved aside, clearing the path to the crystal. Jack rose and walked past the creature, feeling its gaze on his back. He reached the crystal, lifted it from its pedestal and held it high. The arena erupted in a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and trills. Jack had completed all 3 trials, the first non-Catharan in recorded history to do so. As servants escorted Jack from the arena, Kivar approached with excitement rippling through his crest. "The palace is in chaos. You have done the impossible," the young Catharan exclaimed. "Princess Zareth wishes you to join her immediately. She has discovered something of great importance." Jack followed Kivar through winding corridors to a part of the palace he had never seen before. Ancient doors opened to reveal a vast chamber filled with technology that looked distinctly non-Catharan and strangely familiar. Zareth stood before a console covered in dust. As Jack entered, she turned to him, her scales bright with excitement. "These are the records of the ancestors," she explained. "I gained access after your victory, a right reserved for royal selected who passed the trials." Jack approached the console, his heart racing. The symbols on it were worn but recognizable, English letters alongside alien script. "This is human technology," he whispered. "Earth was here before." Zareth nodded. "According to these records, Humans established a research outpost on Cathara over 300 years ago. They called it Project Genesis. What happened to them? Jack asked, running his fingers over the ancient controls. The radiation, Zareth replied. It affected them as it affects you. Some left. Others. Her crest rippled with uncertainty. Others stayed and changed. Jack stared at her, understanding dawning. Are you saying humans and Catharans? The records suggest some humans underwent complete transformation. They became part of Catharan society. She pointed to genetic diagrams on a dusty screen. Certain noble bloodlines show traces of human DNA, including the royal line. Jack's mind reeled with the implications. The changes he was experiencing weren't random. They were following a path traveled by humans centuries before. There's more, Zareth said, activating another console. This might be what you've been hoping for, a working communication array. You could contact your people. Jack stared at the ancient human technology, still functional after centuries. A way home, but as he looked at Zareth, he realized the decision had become far more complicated than he ever imagined. Jack stood before the ancient human communication array, his fingers hovering over controls that could bring him salvation or tear him from a world that was becoming increasingly important to him. The technology was remarkably well preserved, Earth-made equipment designed to last centuries. You could return home, Zareth said softly behind him, her scales shifting in patterns that Jack now recognized as emotional conflict. Your people would come for you. Jack turned to look at her. In the weeks since his crash landing, he had changed in ways he was only beginning to understand. His skin now held a subtle iridescence in certain light. His eyes had developed facets that enhanced his vision. Even his thought patterns had shifted, becoming more attuned to Kitharan ways of perceiving the world. And what about you? He asked. Your mother's health fails. Without a proper selected, your claim to rule will be challenged. Zareth's crest flattened slightly. Lady Meva has already called for an emergency council session. Despite your success in the trials, she argues that our union cannot produce an heir, making it invalid for royal succession. Outside the ancient chamber, they could hear the palace buzzing with activity. The news of Jack's triumph in the arena had spread throughout the kingdom, causing both celebration and concern. The discovery of the human outpost added another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. Show me the genetic records again, Jack said. Zareth activated the dusty console. Images appeared, showing the gradual transformation of human DNA under Cathara's unique radiation. The process took years, but the end result was clear. Humans could indeed become compatible with Catharans, their genetic structure adapting to the alien world. The changes are already happening in you, Zareth observed, faster than in these records. Perhaps because of your unique biology, or because the radiation has intensified over centuries. Jack looked down at his hands, where faint patterns were beginning to form beneath his skin. The decision before him was monumental. Activate the Ger array and return to Earth, or remain on Cathara and complete a transformation that would forever separate him from his humanity. A commotion outside interrupted his thoughts. Kivar burst into the chamber, his crest flat with alarm. Princess, the Queen has collapsed. The physicians say her time is near. The Council of Elders has convened an emergency session. Lady Meva is moving to have your claim to the throne invalidated. Zareth's scales darkened with concern. We must go immediately. The council chamber was packed with Catharans, their crests extended in displays of agitation. The Queen's ornate throne sat empty, a stark reminder of what was at stake. Lady Meva stood at the center, her son Dravok beside her with his crest raised in challenge despite his defeat in the arena. The law is clear, Lady Meva was saying, as Jack and Zareth entered. The royal selected must be capable of continuing the bloodline. This human, regardless of his performance in the trials, cannot fulfill this sacred duty. The head elder noticed their arrival. Princess Zareth, these accusations strike at the heart of your claim. How do you respond? All eyes turned to Zareth, whose scales glowed with determination. Respected elders, we have discovered ancient knowledge that changes everything we thought we knew about our world. She presented the genetic records from the human outpost. Humans and Kitherans share a connection deeper than we realized. The changes happening in Jack Miller are proof that compatibility is possible. Our ancestors knew this. Whispers and clicks spread through the chamber as the elders examined the evidence. Lady Maeva's crest flattened with rage. This changes nothing. Even if compatibility were possible, it would take years of transformation. The throne cannot wait. Actually, Jack stepped forward, drawing all attention to himself. I've made my decision. He turned to face the council, aware that his next words would determine his fate forever. The communication array waited in the ancient chamber, offering a path back to his old life. But standing here beside Zareth, Jack realized what he truly wanted. I choose to stay on Kithara, he announced clearly. I choose to complete the transformation. I choose Princess Zareth. The chamber erupted in a mixture of shocked clicks and whistles. Zareth's scales brightened with joy and surprise, her crest displaying patterns Jack had never seen before. The head elder raised her hands for silence. This is unprecedented. The human wishes to become Kitheran for the sake of the royal line?